Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our first installment of the 360 Experience by KOHAN Architecture. Today we have Dr. Titus Tang. He is the owner of 360B Dental and Dental 360. They offer the latest technologies in all dental practices, and they have beautiful offices. Dr. Titus Tang started in 2009. He bought his first practice in 2009 and did a custom rebuild with KOHAN Architecture in 2012. And then in 2021, he extended and found a new location by the help of our next guest, Foad Ahmadi. He is the vice president of Realty, Rome Commercial Realty. He's been in the industry for over a decade, and he's an expert in navigating the marketing conditions and helping his clients get on the way to success. One of our hosts is Mohsen Ghoreishi. He is the founder and president of KOHAN Architecture. He's been practicing architecture for 25 years, and he's been the founder and president of KOHAN Architecture. We just passed our 20th anniversary. Behind the camera, we have Nathan Padilla Bowen. He is Snap Motion Incorporated. He does all the photography and videography for KOHAN Architecture. And I'm Louis Cruz. I'm the account executive and your moderator. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start off with Dr. Tang. So I know you started in 2009, expanded in 2012, and we already had that practice up and running. And then how did you know it was time for you to expand even more?
Well, I had the office since we started working with Mohsen back in 2012. I was very impressed with his work. And in the back of my mind, I have a lot of friends who own multiple offices. And this is actually one of my dreams, to own more than one dental office. And of course, I have to pay off my first one first. So in about, I would say less than about 5 years, we actually paid off my first practice that we work with Mohsen's. And then I talked to my wife. At the time, she allowed me to start looking for a second practice. And of course, I had such a great time with Mohsen. Right. And then the second time, we decided to work with him again. And I think owning multiple offices may not be something that most of the dentists they wanted to do, but I'm glad that I did it.
So when it came time to expand, how did you find Foad?
I have existing relationship with my dental supplier. I have attorney that I work with. I have architect that I work with. And when it comes to finding the best people in the business to work with, I rely on their recommendations. And actually, that's how I kind of get to know him. And, we need someone who, to me, someone who is local, understand the areas. It really helped me because I know nothing about, finding locations. Finding the right bookers, I think, is important because he not only to look for a location for a dental office, there's a lot of things that are associated with that decisions, like the demographic of the area, as far as, how many competitors in the area. We have that analysis. Should I buy? Should I lease? So I think it's very important to be able to work with the experts to look for my second locations.
Awesome. Now, Foad, how do you get to know your client and their expectations and their wants and needs?
I meet with my clients. Thank you. I meet with my clients one-on-one. And in Titus' case, we met at your office. I remember I met you and your wife, Wendy, at your first office. And obviously, the first thing I noticed was the beautiful aesthetic of your office. I saw at hand what your vision was with Mohsen's existing work, and you explained to me where you wanted to go, and that you wanted to be semi-close to the existing office, but not too far, to have that work-life balance. So obviously, meeting with the client firsthand at their existing office, learning what their needs and wants are, and taking that information and going back to my office and doing an analysis in the market to see what's available. At the time, Titus was interested in either purchasing or leasing real estate for the second office, and that's how we found this office at 360 Dental.
Awesome. So what steps come into determining the perfect location for this practice? You mentioned demographics, but ultimately, what's the deciding factor for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really an intimate conversation with the client. We showed. I remember we looked at a bunch of properties together.
We actually look at different cities. There are cities that I like, but we may not be able to find something that we want.
Right. We narrowed it down to maybe 3 to 5 properties from, I think there was an initial list of maybe 10 to 15 properties. And then we kind of narrowed it down to 3 to 4. And then, we went for this one.
So once you decided this is the one I want to go for, what steps did you take beforehand, even reaching out to the landlord, or before even engaging the conversation?
Great question. So I think financials, having Dr. Tang set up with a good lender, and obviously with Mohsen and KOHAN there to assess the space before we kind of knew what we were getting ourselves into before we started the negotiations. Those are critical. Yeah.
Now Mohsen, how did you contribute to helping secure the space?
Well, I remember very well, you guys looked at hundreds of spaces, and I was like, this is going to be a pretty long process. So when Foad and Dr. Tang let me know that they have a desired space, that's what I always recommend to all of our clients, where we go take a look at what is there. And it's funny, if we find things that really it's going to be very prohibitive to actually buy or lease. Because when we walk the space, we look at the structural issues, we look at the infrastructure like mechanical, electrical, plumbing. So what we did, we went to that space, and that space was a dental office prior, and it was vacated. So we toured the entire space. But what was complex about the building that I know when I did the cost estimate, I did an X factor for that, was the existing infrastructure. This was basically a shopping center with a basic, pretty monster infrastructure for boilers and chillers and for HVAC, for heating and cooling, as well as it had complex structural system, which made it quite difficult to build in that space, at least to remodel. So I brought all of that to Dr. Tang's attention, and of course with Foad, and that would impact the timeline, and it would impact the budget.
Right.
And I worked with Foad to, because I know, if I recall right, the landlord wanted a very aggressive timeline.
Correct.
And you all had some allowances, and you needed to know the budget. So I had to come up with those things. So I did scan the existing space, brought it to our structural engineer attention, to mechanical, electrical, plumbing attention, and then gave it to you, all that information, to see how you can sort it out. So that's what I did. That's what I do normally, and of course that's what we did with Foad. Of course, this is a very smart client. That's why, actually, and of course very smart broker, because otherwise they would go ram through it and do it, and then they would understand the difficulties. It was great to go into it with an open eye, if you will.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Tang, this was a big investment on your part. So how did you plan, or how did you create what success looked like to you when doing this investment?
Well, I mean, ultimately, I wanted to build the office that it would be more efficient. I could be more productive, and I would have a little bit less stress. I would say running a dental office is pretty stressful, especially if we have a lot of patients coming in. The flow of the office is very important. I think before we kind of get to the design part, we have a operation analysis.
Yes.
And you want to get to know me, how we run things at the office. I think that's important. Having a well-planned office, it will help me to sort of create like an identity to kind of be consistent with the type of practice that I'm running or the type of offices that I want it to be. And a nice office, it will help me to communicate with my patients better, and hopefully they will be able to see the quality of care that I provide to the clients, and these are all very, very important to me. Yeah.
So what kind of, I guess, what kind of office do you, what's your style? How do you want it to be perceived?
You know, I think there's a lot of dentists that they have a good idea about what they want before they actually approach to architect or interior designer. I remember the first time I talked to Mohsen and I said, hey Mohsen, give me a modern, contemporary, cool looking dental office like an Apple store. But I mean, I think a lot of times we need to talk to a lot of communications between architect and the clients to see he is the one who can understand what I want and design an office that is very unique to me. And I think some of the things that we have done in the past, I filled out a questionnaire that you provided to me. You asked me to find pictures online, Pinterest.
Yeah, right.
I think those are very, very helpful. I may not be able to tell Mohsen exactly what my style is, but through conversations, meeting with him to go over some images and pictures that I like, he would have a better idea about, you know, what I want.
Now, Mohsen, after you kind of got a good idea of his vision, how do you make sure that that stays clear and at the end of the completion of the project?
That's a many $1 million question, right, Foad? Because I had Foad on my back on the construction cost and timeline every day, and then of course vision with Dr. Tang. We then his first office, but the second office seemed to have a whole different vision. So through that process, which we have, like you said, the problem is we understood the vision, but then how do you manage the budget and the timeline, because they're all together? And that's where Foad came in, constantly calling me. Can you tell me when you are going to finish this project? When are we going to start construction? How long the construction is going to take? So we had to look at Dr. Tang's budget. We had to look at his vision and the timeline that Foad pushed us against and see if we can make it all work. Our job is to bring all of that together as best as we can. It's a risky business. So we always say we are going to minimize the risk, not 100% remove it, because there are lots of obstacles that comes to, I know, how much did you have tenant improvement? You had a certain number of dollars.
It was a lot.
It was
we were talking about it
Yeah.
before we started the webinar. It was definitely a sizable amount.
And I know the tenant, the landlord was adamant for you to move in as fast as you could because they wanted you to occupy this very large space. So how we secure that vision is to make sure that vision is realistic with the realistic budget and a realistic timeline. If you don't have any of these at the level of almost realistic, it is impossible to manage it and carry it to come to reality. Right. So we set a realistic budget at a forefront. So all front end work is really important. Like what you did and like what I did on the front end. Like we did operational analysis, we looked at hundreds of pictures, dissect those pictures to really get into your head and see the world through your eyes. And also we look at your dollar amount, how much you want to spend, put all of that together and say, okay, you know what, all of this is realistic and let's go forward. And then we try to keep steady and stay on that. So we keep check and balance with the general contractor. We normally bring a general contractor on board throughout the process They like to come on board because they want to be part of the process and hopefully they can build it. And we went back and forth and we sort of stayed in the budget. That's how we stayed with the vision and the budget, because we had a GC on board where we could check and balance throughout the process. And of course, during construction, we stay on board throughout to make sure we watch the project. It's a constant love that you have to give it, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, one of the things that I impressed the most is, Mohsen is sort of like a project manager to kind of help us to, there are things that I don't understand, I will go to him, and then if there are things that needs to be clarified, he would help me to find the answers, yeah.
I think having a great team is very important. So what is your insight on the team you built to accomplish your goal?
It's a big team. There's a lot of different pieces.
Right.
There we have dental equipment supplier, agents, architect, general contractor. Of course, I'm my accountant, my attorney, practice consultant. I think one thing that I wanted to build is someone that I could trust.
Yeah.
And they all have, put my, looking out for me, because, when we are talking about a big project like that, there are a lot of unknowns and uncertainty that I need other people to kind of help me out. So I think building the team is very important.
Foad, as being part of one of the members of the team, how did you advocate for Dr. Tang?
So the landlord, the previous tenant in that space was a national dental group. So I had to present the landlord, this local dentist that just lives down the street, who wants to occupy this former space in a mall that has Nordstrom and H&M and all these national tenants, and he's just a local guy. So obviously, the success of his existing office, the team that we just talked about, a dental specific architect, dental specific contractor, a team of highly specialized, highly efficient folks that are only working for Dr. Tang to get this project done. So that was part of my job, to sell the landlord on that. Obviously his financials and everything else that comes with that, but it's showing the portfolio of his work and of Mohsen's work and everything to get the landlord on board.
So basically, you had to sell all of us.
All you guys, all you guys. So yeah, that was part of the negotiation. Is to get the best rental rate for Titus, the tenant improvement dollars to help him and to help Mohsen get that vision that he wanted, and the timeline. So we negotiated, I think it was almost like a year's worth of free rent, for the construction, because I know we had some delays with planning.
Yes.
So yeah, it was all that.
So I think Foad really stayed on throughout for quite some times, until we were at the point that we were stable and we could see the light at the end of the tunnel, where he sort of could sleep at night on this project, probably, right? because the moments we started having issues, which we can go over that, then the landlord was becoming problematic, like what's going on, so he had to actually fix it. He was a fixer.
I was a good cop. I was a good cop. So yeah, we got it done.
So I commend you for that role.
Thank you,
really.
sir.
Thank
you very much.
So you're obviously licensed in California, and so you know what you're doing. But how does that differ from legally? How does that differ from like a lawyer's input? How do you navigate, I guess, giving legal advice to clients and all these everyone else in the team?
Great question. So, my role as a real estate broker is to get the best economics for my client, save them as much money as possible. Another integral piece of that team is a good attorney. So once we get a deal after the LOI stage or a letter of intent stage, and the landlord presents us with a lease draft. That's the legal document that's 30, 40, 50 pages long with legal language and clauses and this and that. That's when you need an attorney involved to help navigate you through those waters, and a good attorney, because especially with a landlord like this one that we had, you definitely don't, you need high caliber attorney to help get a good lease for you.
I totally agree. I mean, but you are the one who helped me to kind of audit the lease first.
Sure.
Even with the attorney, they took a long time to go kind of back and forth with I remember with the landlord before we can finalize.
Yeah, the landlord definitely wasn't easy, and part of my job is to kind of help push the appropriate parties, push Titus's attorney, push the landlord and their attorney to come to agreement. So, yeah, I remember there was a lot of that.
I guess there's no true perfect path to success. You got to forge it.
Right.
So once you got that forged and you actually got the lease signed, Mohsen, what next did you have? What problems did you experience during the actual building, construction, and planning of all this?
There were no problems.
There were no problems.
perfect.
right.
It was perfect.
No, we have actually I got some photos, and I had to write down. I know the first timeline we had when we started the project, when Foad called me, and he said, "Put a timeline together," and we put a timeline together. Really, the reason I talk about it, because in this 360 experience, we're trying to understand Dr. Tang's experience of when he started, when they got together and came to my office. So put a timeline together. I put a timeline together to basically put the project to bed and permit November 2018. And then we were 1 year delayed. That 1 year, it ended up being, we put the project up to bid and permit October 2019. You know what that means? That's 4 or 5 months before COVID. And then we hit COVID.
Yeah.
So I looked at all the timelines we created, and I
Yeah.
went through it's amazing when you get the job done, you forget all of this, because now, but when they came to me, I looked at the timeline, we put a timeline together, but we knew we have obstacles. So I show you some photos of some of the issues we had. If I could bring this up, and we're gonna do this. This was the before picture of this project, where if you notice, we have this just front entry, and we had all of these solid walls along the street line, right? And when we walked the space with Foad and Dr. Tang, and Wendy as well, your wife, "Hey, Mohsen, can you just remove this wall?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm gonna get the genie out of the bottle, go poof." So this was literally the picture, the wall we had, and they wanted to have windows looking inside the office. So this was the existing office, very old, beat up, probably 20 years ago. And when we demoed the inside office, when you see these beams and columns, they were seismic retrofit for this building.
Right.
So we had to deal with that, and we just simply couldn't remove it. And then we had issues with electrical and these pedestals, columns that they were holding from the basement, this building structure, and they were wide and probably about 12, 14 inches thick. You couldn't drill through it to run a pipe. And of course, this monstrosity in the basement that run the HVAC system and cooling. And then when we wanted to drill into the concrete, because we had these pedestals, they were like 12 foot by 12 feet square, about this big, thick. You couldn't drill through it. So you had to put your plumbing in certain locations where the concrete was, maybe 10 inches rather than 12 to 14 inches, and run the plumbing in a certain way, take care of those columns, braces in a certain way to provide windows look at those, you see those bracing,
Nice.
as you see on those. These were when we removed the drywall and they demoed it, they all came out, because there was not a decent drawing for this building, unfortunately, to really assess all of this prior to construction. These are the things we couldn't see. But I saw the columns in the basement. I saw the pedestals that they were 12 by 12, about 14 inches thick that we had to watch for. Those braces, there's like, how do we fix that, right? So we had to deal with all of that stuff to create. We couldn't touch it, we couldn't remove it, so we had to navigate. So we removed the exterior wall. Those were the issues with the building. And when we did the planning, because we touched the exterior of the building, we had to go to the landlord.
And I want to chime in here. I remember when you and Mohsen brought the idea of adding the exterior windows. I went back to the landlord, and they were actually open to the idea, because you remember at that time the mall was going through a huge remodel, and they wanted to change the whole aesthetic of the mall. So that kind of worked in our favor. But I know there was some other challenges. So
Well, yeah,
Yeah, but-
well, I was hoping you can get their approval.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
definitely a
So,
hurdle.
so we removed the exterior wall and we exposed all of these beams. You see, that was the exterior wall in this area. We exposed all of these beams, start framing into it, and we were going to install glazing in front of this bracing. This is a barrier between the sidewalk and the street, of course, that we installed. That's that barrier, but we were working right behind it, and that was a monster of a work because this building wasn't quite straight. So we had a lot of issues. When we did design this, of course, we didn't know we have all these issues. So first step was to get the landlord. That's why we were 1 year delayed, because of too many reviews and approvals, and they took their sweet time. And that's why they worked with us with the revision of our timeline. I don't know, I don't think they revised your TI allowances.
No, but I think they were, we were very transparent from the beginning. And I think that worked in our favor as far as some of these delays that we had with, I know you had with permitting and planning.
Yes.
So I think that worked in our favor as far as having those open dialogues and conversations.
Yeah, the moment you touch the exterior of the building, you have to at least 6 months back and forth with city planning department. And of course, in this case, very tough landlord as well. So we had like 2 blocks. We had the landlord review, we had the city planning review, and that really adds to the number of months that you can add to this. So those were the issues. These are some of the other few. That was the easy part, the framing part, and I know Dr. Tang every day went there, and this is our crew that they were wondering what the heck is going on here. So they were like, what is going on? And it's just amazing. It was a pretty big space, and we created. So construction-wise, it was because we do site visit. So we did several, like about 8 or 10 site visits probably, and every time Dr. Tang, Wendy, they were there, review the site, every room, every corner, every cranny, every hole, and of course answer questions throughout. And that's Wendy over there. This is during COVID, by the way, guys. So this project was delayed about 8 months in 2018 and 19 because of a review of the landlord and the city planning department, and then later COVID. So we finished the project during COVID, right?
Yeah, it was.
So that is the existing, and that is the new. How about that? Pretty big transformation, and I think that's why the landlord was for this, because they knew that it's going to be adding to the actual
Absolutely.
look of the
mall. Yeah.
In fact, Dr. Tang spent his money to make the mall look better. So we had a lot of issues dealing with that, nor even about some of these finishes. If you recall, some of the lights, they wouldn't let us. I mean, there were so many intricacies, so many questions, so many issues. We had to work with the landlord about that. But I can show more photos if you want me to show more photos.
Please.
These are some of the existing corridor. I put it against the new corridor. So you could work in this dental office, So I think one of the questions you and I talk about, how can you expand your practice and see more patients? Tell us a bit, if you walk the patient through this corridor versus that corridor.
That's right.
What is the patient experience?
That's right.
You are practicing there now. Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, I think this area of the office, I get the most compliment.
Oh, really? Why is that?
You know, because of the
Lumi wall?
Doomy wall. I
Oh.
mean, it's just amazing. All the patients, they walk the area, they pull out their phone
Oh, to take a picture.
to take a picture.
They do selfies?
They do selfies. It's
I don't think they do a selfie with that one.
I don't think so. It's very interesting because one day I have a dentist walk into my office, and he was like, "Oh, hey, can I take a tour?"
Oh.
He's actually a friend of mine who built this office
Oh.
This, oh.
like 20-something years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He started it,
Uh-huh.
and he was totally impressed with the layout and everything. You know.
Well, I noticed some of our clients, they used to not give a tour to their clients.
Yeah.
I remember when I met you the very first time at your office in Daly City on the
Right.
upper level,
Upper
was
level.
it? I probably don't think you'd give a tour in that office. That was
Not much of the tour.
right. But I know our clients, they certainly love to give a tour to their new patients because they're
Right.
proud of it. And team members also probably love
Even
to.
for local dentists, I cannot tell you how many times that dentists will come by my office and say, hey, I check you out online. Is it okay if I kind of come by and
Take a look.
take a look? Yeah. I have
Wow.
many dentists. Yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah. They are not my friends, by the way.
well. So as you see, these beams are now exposed. The glazing is right behind it. And this is the style of operatories that Dr. Tang required as far as the location of the TVs and, of course, how the room should be. And I think this is one awesome space to deliver
Right.
dentistry to
Right.
your
They're
patients.
very roomy.
Have you raised your prices, Dr. Tang?
No. I should.
Yeah, and this is old and new. I put it against together. This is
That's
Dental
right.
360, and I think that is the testament to what your vision was,
Oh, yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
right?
I mentioned to you before, I said, hey, Mohsen, can I do something a little different this time?
This-
Restoration hardware.
Oh yes.
Remember?
Yes, of course. We had one other issue here. When you walked into this space, there was a ramp here. There was
Yeah.
a huge
Yes.
ramp with railing all around it. I think the first picture I showed in this presentation, and I walked in and said, "Oh no, how do we get rid of that?" Because that was this railing. As you walked in, it just went throughout the entire space, and it's like we got rid of the ramp. We fixed it. So the point is, those are the issues we had to deal with during. This is a custom cabinetry, of course, for Dr. Tang. It's quite different from your B59 office because you learn from B59, and every time you do a new office, you learn and you enhance it, of course. And the end of the corridor, and of course, doctor's office, I think, right?
Right.
And I think we got two of those offices, and yeah, look at that. You want to spend some time in there.
That's actually one of the highlights of the office.
Is that right?
Patients, they come here as I do. I mean, I love your restroom.
Yeah, yeah, it's a pleasant space, really. Actually, you can. So it was okay. I think that was the last slide I have on this project on that. So yeah, we discussed the issues became the issues become problems that we wanted to solve. And when you have problems, it's great because you can use those problems as an opportunity to create amazing spaces. So problems should not be impactful, but some of the problems, like structural issues, especially, could increase this construction cost.
Sure.
Because it becomes really cumbersome to deal with those structural issues. So I know you and I talk about all the time when you bring us in to look at this space, try to examine everything to make sure if you are building something today for $300 square foot and you have a pretty difficult structural existing structure, you could absolutely add another $100 per square foot dealing with that.
Definitely.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that you need to stay flexible and agile throughout this whole process. It lasted maybe about 2.5 years from start to finish, maybe
Yeah,
3.
that's about right.
yeah, that's about right. 2018, 2019,
You
we
guys
occupied, yeah.
2020.
We
Yeah, we
We
occupied
finished
20
like
20
around May 2021.
2020, yeah. So we were in planning about a year, about 8 months, 9 months. And then we hit COVID, of course. We put the project for bid. And in this case, I think we had a general contractor we wanted to switch or something.
Yeah, we did.
And so we went through some bumps through the process.
Correct.
It was not a normal, straightforward project by any means, because the existing suite, the location, the infrastructure, later on some of the issues with the general contractor, and then COVID. So still we did pretty good for the time.
Oh,
I think.
I'm glad that we went through the whole thing. You know, there are friends, when the beginning of the pandemic, they asked me, "Are you still wanted to build the office? We don't know what was going to happen." I said, "No, well, I'm gonna do it." I mean, we spent so much time and energy. I'm glad that we get through it.
So you're happy you got it done?
Oh, definitely. I cannot imagine do it today.
That's
You know,
right.
the cost I would imagine would be a bit more higher than.
Of course,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure,
Yeah, costs have gone up, cost of construction's gone up, and I mean, you got it at a great time, and the fact that there was some infrastructure there, that helped with
Of course.
lowering the cost down.
Yes.
But you know, we were able to get you a heck of a deal
Right.
on the tenant improvements, and
Right.
you know, get a good overall economic.
Yeah, I
deal
think
for
I
you.
think part of your negotiations where the first 2 years we could pay a little bit lower, that's Woody.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that, yeah.
What was that?
Woody helped me out.
So Titus reminded me, when we negotiated the deal with the landlord, we were able to get the first 2 years at a highly discounted rent. So Titus could ramp up his practice to meet his objectives,
Of course.
his pro forma. That obviously we factored in the budget, the construction costs, and
Yes.
everything. So, and that was part of, you asked me how we advocate for the client earlier, and that's how we did it. We present to the landlord that, you know, this is a highly successful doctor. It's going to take time for them to ramp up to see patients. It's not going to be like Nordstrom where they're going to see clients on day one. It's going to take time to ramp up. So that was part of it. We got Titus 2 years, the first 2
The
years,
first 2 years.
highly discounted.
Yeah.
You know, the tenant improvement dollars, I think, I don't want to quote it, but, you know, I want to say it was, you know, definitely 6 figures, but don't recall the number, and almost a year's worth of free rent.
That's awesome.
So
That's some negotiation,
that
negotiating.
was really
Yeah.
good.
Wonderful.
Now, Dr. Tang, it's been maybe 2 years since you've been practicing this office now. So what are the benefits that you've seen come into fruition by working with so specialized people?
You know, it's a long process. So at the beginning, we have you to help me out to kind of, without you getting me the deal, we won't be doing this. And,
My
and
pleasure.
without
My
Mohsen
pleasure.
helping me to design, I would not be having my office. And I think, you know, along the process, you know, earlier we talked about the team. That's important. I want to make sure that I work with the best. When it comes to, well, these are big investment. This is my, you know, second office, and we had our, you know, first office working together, and I had a great time. I mean, I always telling you when I have my third one.
We're looking for the third one now.
We'll do it again. Well, with the need to be approved
Let's
by,
go.
by my wife. But
Please talk to
I
Wendy.
think that that's very important to me. One thing that I could, I've been, my career, I bought an existing office and then we sort of start from scratch. And I could tell you, with a nice functional aesthetics facility, it's really helped my practice in terms of getting more patients coming in. Every single day I have patients telling me, hey, the reason why I come to you is I check the pictures online, great looking office. I think you are a good dentist too. So, and, I mean, this is sort of the most sort of like a driving force. There are a lot of good dentists out there, but not all the great dentists, they have a great looking office. And I think that's really, really helped me to, talking about earlier that, it takes a little time to, because we pretty much start with 0 patients.
At this location.
At this location. We do have some patients that transfer from my first office, which is about 20 miles away. But, we are up and running for about a year and a half. Yeah, we have like a full week schedule, busy. And I think without the help of the office, I would not be able to achieve what I'm doing today.
Because a lot of people talk about the ROI, because I do talk in a lot of different seminars for dentists, for surgeons, and everybody stumbles on how do I pay for it. And you apparently, of course, you overcome that. And tell us, really, how do you come up with, especially at a very difficult time? I mean, it was not a small undertaking.
I mean, to be honest, I didn't think too much about how I'm going to pay for it. I'm just thinking, all right, now I have what I needed. Let's get to work.
That's a great attitude.
I really, I'm always hoping that,
But it's paying for it.
Yeah.
So what I say is like it's not tangible. Like you buy this today, and I can add $100 and sell it $100 more, and that's what I make. This one you cannot feel it or sense it, but you are making it.
Correct.
And you relate that to your great dentistry at the same time.
Right.
Having the office that you want.
Right. I mean, I tell you, a lot of people, they may have questions about, should I buy an existing office, or should I build something that I like?
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's really depending on where you're at, in your career. But if you ask me, I'm about 20 years out from dental school.
Mm-hmm.
No questions. Building something that I like is the way to go. Is the way to go.
Great. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yes. Now, I'm gonna ask everyone this same question, but I want everyone to give their own insight on this. So I'll start with you, Foad. So for a new student of dentistry, just graduated, what advice do you have for them if they want to open up their own practice one day?
Surround yourself with a good team. Number one, surround yourself with people that know what they're doing. Good real estate broker, good architect, good attorney, good contractor. Having a good team of people behind you from day one is going to eliminate a lot of those roadblocks for you down the road. Because if you go in there blind, it's gonna leave you, high and dry, or maybe lose money. So it's good to have a solid team.
Thank you for asking that question. I want to chip in something for Foad, because I always had this question for him. Can I ask him that question? Okay. When you started working with Dr. Tang, why didn't you go straight to a general contractor and you came to us? Because I know a lot of doctors, dentists, they pick up the phone and call a general contractor when they want to do a project. As a broker, why did you just straight went to an architect rather than to a general contractor, or did you?
Well, I think obviously we met with Titus and Wendy at their office, and we saw the aesthetic, and he mentioned that you were part of that first project with them.
Yes.
So I felt that it was very important to have you on board from day one, because you obviously knew you knew the client better than I did. You know what they want, and having you on board to kind of tell me if there are any roadblocks in the space to look for when we go back to the landlord to negotiate. Those were, that's invaluable.
Well, I get that, but if we hadn't worked with them,
Yeah.
would you go to architect or general contractor first?
I think that I would rely on the client on that, because obviously, there's definitely benefits in bringing the architect on day one, and also benefits on bringing a contractor on day one, or bringing both the architect and the contractor together, because having that team on board walking the space together is going to open your eyes to little issues that maybe I may not see or you may not see. The contractor can bring to our attention, or
That's
you
true.
can bring that to the contractor's attention.
Of course.
Vice
True.
versa.
Okay. That's very good.
I guess, something that we didn't talk a whole lot is how important it is to have a good general contractor.
That is very true.
Someone who understand your work, your design, someone that you work with before, and I think that's very important. I mean, in my decision-making process, I definitely would love to work with someone who worked with Mohsen's before.
I
because
got you.
they-
I buy that. That's very important. We have experiences where people who don't have working relationships, prior working relationships, it makes work a little bit more tough. You need to really babysit that project a lot more, especially if that's your first time you're working with them.
Right.
So that's very true. It would make life a lot easier. Very good.
All right, now, Dr. Tang, say someone's working right now as an associate in another practice, and they want to, invest in their own property and get their own practice like you did. What advice do you have for them?
I would say you sometimes you have to take the leap to move forward. I remember, when I first purchased an office, I never really kind of get to the point where, hey, I am ready. I have the skill, I have the money, I have the team to help me out. I guess you have to kind of stay ready. In the back of your mind, you want to kind of get yourself, be prepared. It could be financially, because a lot of these you need to have pre-approval from the bank or the lender. You have to stay ready. Maybe you could have relationship with an architect. You may not have an office that you could work on right away, but you could kind of get to know people, try to start building up your team. And I think if I could do the whole thing again, take me back to the beginning of my career, I wish I would have done this sooner.
Huh?
Yeah, I would definitely encourage people who are thinking about it, not too sure. I would say, do it.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
How did you know that you were ready to finally make the leap?
Well, of course, I have to have. I've been out for a while, and I believe what I can do, and I at least pay off my existing practice, and I think the most important teammate, it's my spouse. We work together. I think I have her on board is the most important thing. That without her support, I would not be able to get it done. Yeah.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, same question for you, Mohsen. What advice do you have to anybody considering doing what Titus Tang just did?
I think I cannot override Dr. Tang. I think he's right. Just do it. I get questions a lot from startups, young doctors, that they are struggling to figure out when they should do it. I'm sure you do the same. And I was asked the other day, probably that person is watching right now, should I start building that practice now with these interest rates up and inflation? And I told her this, and I think you were there at that conversation. I said, tomorrow is never cheaper than yesterday. So if you're planning to do it today. and don't
Absolutely.
wait. So that was my answer. But of course, if you have a smaller pocket, smaller budget, again, I go back to all the startups. You need to have a realistic budget for a realistic size project. A lot of startups, they go look for a 3,000 square foot office, 2,000 square foot office, and they have a budget only for 1,000 square foot.
Right.
So you really need to have that vision figured out. And I suggest, again, it's not about us or the KOHAN architecture, it's about anybody you work with. I suggest you have an architect on board, try to dig into that vision, have that architect come up with a budget that matches and guide you to match that vision. So it's streamlined, it matches. You cannot have a vision here and a budget here and want to build that building. It will never happen. That's why people struggle, because they struggle with their vision and their pocket money. I say you need a professional help, and try to make those work for you rather than wasting your energy. Instead of you going to after a 2,000 square foot office, you know what the budget is, you know what the strength of the client is as far as pre-approval.
Right.
Then you go, you know what, then you should have 4 ops and you need 1,400 square feet, and I'll look for you for a space like that for you.
Right.
Rather than start looking at 2,500 square foot, because you can never build it.
Right.
So I suggest go do it, but do it and take the right steps rather than just spin it, because, and be honest about it. Be honest about it. You cannot show a rosy picture to anybody. If I come to you as a startup and I tell you I've got $1 million, what can you do? If your architect knows $1 million per experience is 300, 200 per square foot, okay, it's about 1,000, 1,200 square foot office. Why don't you find this startup, and the team can work for you rather than spinning their wheels, and make it happen for you today. I've seen it a lot that they have never made it happen because they're struggling with bringing that vision and budget together, balancing it. I've seen a lot, and I still have a lot. I'm sure you do.
Yeah. Yeah, we see a lot of clients, not having a team. They're doing it on their own, like a DIY approach.
Mm-hmm.
Going out to the market, trying to find space on their own, negotiating on their own. Piecemealing. Finding, an architect and out of state or LegalZoom to do their legal work. It's just it just becomes a mess at the end of the day. So that's why I think you hit it.
I cannot tell you how many of my colleagues that they think let me do this and do that, maybe I could save a little bit of money. I mean, there are times that, if you ask me what are the parts that I think the money is the best spent, I would say the money that I spend with my architect. I mean, he took care of my projects compared to construction costs. That's not even something that I would say, hey, I don't want to go through an architect. Maybe I would just go to my dental supplier. They have a lot of the dental supplier. They have their own design team.
That's true.
And then they will, of course, they want you to buy their, equipment, cabinetry, and all that. That may not be something that I like. Yeah.
So just do it today, like you said.
Oh no, yeah, I would totally agree with Mohsen. I think we the dentists sometimes we need to be realistic. I think a lot of us we want to spend the minimal, but we want the most granted. I think we need to be realistic. Yeah, do it today.
That's interesting experience. I think this is a real good talk. I hope I know probably a lot of my friends are on the other side. They're watching this. I know a few startups that are watching this very webinar because they're struggling how to go about it. They need you, of course, Rome Realty, of course, to take care of it. I know you have an offices in Southern California as well.
Yeah, we have offices here in Northern California, in the Bay Area, and also offices in Southern California as well. So we got the state covered.
Yeah, wonderful. Great team, of course. I know most of you guys. So we're very proud to working with you, of course. And I think we have quite a bit of good general contractors in the area as well, that they are dental specific and they do great work. And as well as cabinet makers, because dental cabinetry is a big deal. I know a lot of people buy prefabricated, or some doctors like Dr. Tang likes custom cabinetry, of course. There's all kinds of variety of cabinetries out there, which is their prerogative to choose. But we have a lot of good people to really work with you. Thank you. This is great. I hope your experience with our audience, works and learn from you.
No, I encourage, if you're the ones that are watching and you kind of, I'm not sure if you want to do it, welcome to, shoot me an email or contact me. I'm more than happy to talk to you about it. My experience with KOHAN.
Oh, well, of course. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
So for all of our viewers, if you're watching live, if you're watching later on the website, we hope you gained a lot of knowledge and a lot of insight of what it takes to make a great practice. Again, I want to thank our guest, Foad, of Rome Commercial Realty. He's obviously going to really advocate for his clients, get the best deal possible, and make sure you're set up for success. I want to thank Dr. Tang for sharing your insight, encouraging others to make the leap, and for working with KOHAN architecture and kind of proving what value we provide for our clients. And of course, thank you, Mohsen, for
You're welcome.
Arranging all of this stuff for everyone to come together. And
I appreciate everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And thank you, Nathan Padilla.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you,
you. You're a great cameraman.
We
snap
appreciate it.
motion.
Please reach out if you have any questions.
We'll put the information for you, if you're okay, online. That way they can reach out to you, of course, and ask questions, of course.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.